Welcome back, everybody. Today I'm still working on the 2015 Jeep Patriot. I think one of the last things I need to do is to change the transmission fluid. I've already taken the cover off from underneath the car, and my goodness, what is this? Look at that. That looks to be a broken transmission tube. I'm gonna have to figure out why that broke off and get that replaced. In the meantime, here, if you look, is the transmission. Now this is not a normal transmission. It's not a standard, which you have to shift and it has a clutch, and it's not a regular automatic transmission. This is what they call a CVT. Now this doesn't have gears per se. This actually has a belt and a couple of pulleys that kind of squeeze together to widen the way the belt sits on the pulley, and that's how it changes gears. It takes two filters. There's one in here and there's one at the top, and it takes a special synthetic CVT fluid. I'm going to go ahead and show you those things right now, and then we'll get started taking this off. I'm letting it cool off a little bit because I just drove it in here. What I have here, and excuse the sweat, it is about 109 degrees here in Texas today, so pardon me if I'm sweating. I've got the fan off so you guys don't have to listen to that. But these are the things that it's going to take to change the transmission fluid on this. This is the filter that goes up in the pan area, and on the top of the transmission there's another filter, and I will go ahead and open this one. This one looks like a very small oil filter. So you can see this thing just looks like the inside of a tiny oil filter. And this one is probably one of the more important transmission filters for the CVT. You want to make sure you change this. And lastly, we have the CVT transmission fluid. This is full synthetic. I trust Castrol. I've used it in every car I've ever had, and I've never had problems. But it takes almost 5 quarts of this transmission fluid to refill after you've drained all of the other fluid out. So now that you know what we need, I'm going to go ahead and get you set up, and we'll get started draining the fluid. This transmission has a drain plug, so let's hit that first. I believe this is a 10mm hex. I'm going to grab that and we'll get this thing drained. First, you want to make sure you actually have a pan underneath the drain plug so that you don't make a huge mess. I've got my 10mm hex. I'm just going to get it in here, and I'm going to move around the other side so I can get more leverage on this. See if I can get my big fat mitts out of the way so you can see what's going on here. Never mind, you're just going to have to deal with my mitts for the moment. Okay, well, there is the drain plug out. I'm just going to go ahead and let this drain for quite a while. And you can see it does not seem to be horrible, but it does not look super clean either. It actually kind of smells a little burnt. So we're just going to let this drain. I want to let this drain as much as I can before I can take this pan off. It's been about 20 minutes. I think that it's just about drained as much as it's going to drain just from the plug. Let me go ahead and put this back. And the reason I'm putting this back right now is that I got to take the pan off anyway, and I want to put this back to make sure, one, that I don't lose it, and two, that by the time I get done with this job, I don't want to have to remember that I forgot to tighten this. So we're just going to go ahead and tighten it right now. That's the plug put back on. We're going to go ahead and take this pan off now. So I think I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it one more time. This is the front of the car, and it's kind of leaning this way because I've got it up on jack stands. I'm going to take all of these bolts all the way around here off, and I'm going to leave 2 or 3 at the very front. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep this pan from falling off. And I'll loosen these up. Once all of these are off, I'll loosen these up, and that will allow this side of the pan to kind of tip down a little bit and drain the rest of that fluid out so that we don't have a huge mess. These are all 10mm bolts. I've got my 10mm. I'm just going to get started. I know none of you want to see my face, but there it is. Put my face, as my daughter would say, I'm putting my face out in the world. Easy, buddy. Need a hand surgery. There you go. And there we go. Got a good flow going on. Okay, I'm just going to let that drain for a minute, and I'll be right back. So off camera, I went ahead and loosened up these last bolts along this front side. And you don't want to take them out, you just want to loosen them up. And as you can see, this pan has kind of tipped down, and it's let the rest of the oil drain out. And there's still going to be a little in the pan, but it did have quite a bit of a fluid come out of the pan. Now I can take these off. Just want to be very careful. I'm going to grab a towel because it's pretty hot and get these other 3 bolts out, 4 bolts, and we can get the pan off. So that is it. And one thing I do want you to notice is inside most transmissions, you're going to see these 2 circular magnets. It might not be a circle, it might be a square, it could be, who knows, it could look like a minion. Nobody knows what they're going to look like in here except for the engineer, but these catch pieces of metal that have come off the transmission, and transmissions are going to shed a little bit of metal no matter what you do. This one, it doesn't look horrible. I mean, there's not metal everywhere, so these magnets have been doing their job, but we will have to clean these off. If you look, they do have quite a little bit of metal, but this is kind of the powdery bits of metal. It's not big chunks, and this is kind of expected in an automatic transmission. Just make sure before you put this back on that you clean these magnets and clean the whole pan. This is the transmission filter, the one that sits up in the pan, and it's really just a screen. This one actually looks pretty good, but I do have a new one, so it does not make sense to do all this work and leave the old filter in. I'm just going to give this a little wipe down. In fact, it's still, if you can see, dripping quite a bit. I'm just going to give this about a half an hour just to drip and let it do its thing by itself, and then I'll come back and wipe it off, because I could wipe it now and it's just going to keep dripping. So we'll just let it drip. Now, it might seem kind of strange when you're changing transmission fluid in a car to be up on top of the engine. But in this case, this is a CVT transmission, and specifically this one, and I think this is also created by Mitsubishi, this transmission, even though it's in a Jeep. There is a filter on top of here too. So we have got to take off some of these bits and get down underneath here. Let me get you set up and we'll do that. Okay, so I know it's kind of angled to the side here, but hopefully you can see this. It's a battery cover slash air intake, and this is kind of where the cold air comes in from the engine to here. So I'm just going to take this off, set it to the side. We've got the battery here. The piece we need to get to is underneath the battery, so we're going to have to take the battery and the battery tray out. I'm going to go ahead and get you set up. There's a bolt straight down there. I know you can see it. That's the bolt holding the battery in place. It's just a brace that holds the battery down. We've got to take the battery cables off, and then we've got to get that bolt out. So I'm going to do that off camera. I think everybody knows how to take this off, but I'm going to maybe show you taking this bolt out. So I have taken the battery cables off, and I also got this bolt loose. These are 10 millimeter. This one down here is a 13. I'm going to go ahead and get this pulled out, and I need both my hands to do it, so I'm going to pull that out and show you what that looks like. This is the piece that holds the battery down onto the battery tray. And you can see it's just a bracket or a brace and a 13 millimeter bolt. Now that we've got that out, I need to get the battery out. If any of you ever watch Vice Grip Garage, which I love, this battery is missing the most important piece, the go handle. So this one's going to take me 2 hands. Now that we got the battery out, you can see the battery tray. And if you look, there are 5 13 millimeter nut/bolts down there that I need to undo to get this thing out. I'm going to do that off camera. I'll show you what we need to get to underneath. I've got the bolts out. This battery tray should just lift out of here. Hopefully I won't embarrass myself and spill everything. I'm just going to go ahead and set that to the side. I'm going to get you set up and show you what we're talking about down here. That's essentially this piece right here. If you recall, back when we first started this video, I showed you the pieces that we needed to get this thing fully done. And that very small, what looked like an oil filter, fits right here. So I know there's a lot of people that don't even know this filter exists. This is the most important one. This is filtering a lot of the stuff out of the fluid. So what we need to do is there are 4 bolts here, down there, and here, and I believe they're 10 millimeter. And we're going to take this is essentially a cover, and it will just pull away, and the filter is inside there. I went ahead and got those bottom 2 out of there. I didn't want to do it on camera because I would have been embarrassed, and it was burning my hands because this thing is still, she's hotter than a barrel of fire. Bone Thugs. I'm not sure what the hell I just dropped there. Oh, okay, that was, I'll have to find that. That was the negative battery cable nut. But she went flying down there somewhere. I'll have to find that. But I still have these top 2, and it's still hot. But I'm gonna go ahead and get these off. $10 mil bolts. There we go. And you can see, I want to show you this, if I can get it up here. Damn, that's still hot. Hopefully you can see that. I'm not going to hold on to it. But if you look right around here, here's an O-ring. This one is still in really good shape. Thank goodness, because they did not have this at the parts store. I'm going to go ahead and clean this off before I put it back together, but this O-ring is good. If yours is bad, make sure you replace it or it will leak. And if you look really closely, right down in here, and maybe I'll try to get you down in there. Okay. There is the filter that we need to take out. Should be able to just pull this. Should just be able to pull this. Oh, just get this. Just pull it out. Here it is. The small filter. You can see it's pretty filthy. But the little rubber gasket is still stuck inside there. So I get to chase that thing down. Yay. Gee whiz, guys. There's a little rubber piece. Goodness sakes, man. And of course, the fantastic engineers made it so you can't even get a pair of needle nose pliers in there. So I just had to stick my fingers down in there where it's super hot and get this damn thing out. But there it is, it's out. We're ready to put the new one in. Here we've got the new filter, and you can see how much cleaner. I should have put them side by side, but you saw that the other one was completely black. This one looks nice and fresh. It's got a good, fresh rubber gasket on it. I don't want to shove this on there. I'm going to take a little bit of this oil that's kind of sitting down inside here, and of course now I can't get to any of it. Just take a little bit of oil on your finger, rub it around this gasket so that you don't run the risk of tearing the gasket just because the gasket is dry, or the rubber grommet. And we're going to go ahead and put this back in place. And it should just pop on there. It just pop right on there. Okay, that took a little bit of force to get on there. It was not super simple, but you can see it's on. I'm going to go ahead and clean these, and I'll come back when I've gotten these clean. I'm just going to use a paper towel to wipe it down and clean up that oil down there. Whew! Sorry guys, I got this cleaned up. Guys and gals, people. I just call you people. Maybe some of you aren't people, I don't know, but in any case, I have this clean. I just used some brake fluid on a towel, wiped it down. I'm not going to bore you with putting bolts back in. It just goes back on. There's 4 bolts. You saw them before. They're right here. Just going to get them put back in there, and I'll be back. A quick tip. While trying to put that bolt in, I dropped it. And I can't get to it because it fell down inside there. So you should invest in a telescoping magnet. It's very small. Get it at Harbor Freight. No, I'm not sponsored. And you should be able to get down in there and get any bolt you want. It's been a couple of hours. I had some other things to deal with, but I've gotten these bolts put back on. So this is all sealed up. While I went to put the battery tray back in, I remembered that there was something else down here. Right here. Let me see if I can get some light on that. Right here. This is where the dipstick tube broke off. And I forgot about that until just now. So I can't put everything back together. I'm going to have to get this dipstick tube out and either weld it back together, probably impossible, or buy a new one. Probably expensive. We'll see what happens. In any case, can't put her back together yet. If you look straight down here, okay, stupid hand, get out of the way. Right down inside there, there's a T30 bolt. And there's also one hidden under here. I'm gonna go ahead and get that off and either replace it or fix it. Not sure yet. So I finally got the dipstick tube out. Boy, was that a pain in the... It's broke right there. Here's the top part. They go together like so, like that. I'm gonna go see if these are super expensive. I'm assuming this is probably $45,000, and I'm just probably gonna have to try and weld it together somehow. 72 hours later, you can see I've got the battery back in place. I put the tray, I put the battery back in, put all bolts in, tightened everything up. But this is what took so long. This piece, this is the fill neck and the level checking neck for the automatic / CVT transmission. And this had broken off down there. So I took both pieces out and I did a really crappy job of welding it back together. But I think it'll last long enough, and it's pretty strong. I'm not a welder. I gave it a little bit of paint, and there it is back on. So I'm gonna crack on with the underneath part and get that filter and that pan back in place. Here's the pan with the old gasket. The old gasket, you can see it's pretty brittle and it's smashed. It might be made out of metal, I'm not sure. In any case, new one. Alright, I'm going to get this all put together. If you remember, first I'm going to clean these just with some brake fluid. I've got the pan clean, just some brake cleaner, and a towel to wipe it out. These magnets, obviously they're not glued down, they're magnets. They just stick. So you can take them off and get them really clean, and then just set them back down in there before we put the pan on. I'm just going to clean this up just a tiny bit. I've just got a rag. I'm just going to spray some brake cleaner on the rag. And it doesn't take much. Just kind of wipe it off. It doesn't have to be perfect. But what you want to do for sure is make sure that you get this gasket contact area clean. You don't have to get all of this, and I don't like, some people spray directly on here. I don't like to spray the brake cleaner directly on here. Next thing we got to do is take off this filter. These are 3 to 10 millimeter bolts. I'm just going to grab the new filter. I'm going to grab the wrench. We'll get this off, get the new one on. Got my 10 millimeter. Just going to go ahead and get these off. Make sure you get them back in the same location. Make sure you get the O-ring off with it. The new one comes with a new O-ring, so I'm just going to toss this, and you can see it doesn't look too bad. Here's the replacement, brand new. Make sure they look the same. Now the square's in a little bit different location. I think that's okay. And you want to just kind of lubricate this O-ring. You can just use some of the old fluid. That's not going to hurt anything. Just enough so you don't cause an issue when you push it back up here. These don't need to be torqued down. You can just put them on. Next, I'm going to get the gasket put on the pan. We'll get the pan back on. You don't need to use this. I like to use it on things like this. It's aviation level gasket sealer. But I like it because it comes with a brush. And for these kind of applications, you don't need a lot. And this allows you to just kind of brush it on. Very thin. I will caution you about this stuff. Shake the hell out of it before you use it. Alright, we're going to get this pan back on. Alright, I've got all my bolts. Got the pan here with gasket sealer on it. What we're going to do is just gently lay this up in here. And if you notice, there's a pin that goes in this hole, so we'll make sure we get that aligned. There's another one over here. I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of these bolts in off camera, and I'll show you once we get ready to start tightening them. I hand snugged all of these up just enough to keep the pan up. I'm going to go ahead and torque them down. I don't think this is completely necessary. I'm going to go with wrist tight. Okay, we are done. The last thing we need to do is go up top, put the fluid in. I'm going to get you set up, and we'll do that. So this is a 2015 Jeep Patriot, and on most vehicles they have a tube with a dipstick. On this one it says, hey dummy, don't open this. This is for dealers only. Dealer only. I guess I'm a dealer today. I'm going to go ahead and get my funnel, and we are going to start putting the CVT fluid down this tube. I've got my funnel. I always spray mine down with a little bit of brake fluid and wipe it down with a towel just to make sure you're not putting any extra dirt in the engine. I'm going to go ahead and start pouring this in. I'm not going to bore you. I'm going to just get started, then I'll do it off camera. I love Castrol. Castrol is the only thing I use in all my cars, oil and everything else. I'm not sponsored. I just trust it a lot. I've never had a problem. None of my cars have ever had an issue of a breakdown because of the oil, but I trust it. And when you find something you can trust, go with it. If you remember, the fluid that we drained out was almost dark brown. It should be this kind of cherry red color, if you see this. And hopefully you can see this, on the camera, but it should be this almost like a bright cherry red. I'm going to stop there for a second. I'm going to get underneath and make sure nothing's leaking, that I'm not pouring fluid everywhere before I keep going. And I'm going to do the rest off camera. Well, folks, suffice it to say that the rubber gasket here that comes with that AutoZone pan screen is a complete piece of junk. I have loosened, tightened, loosened, tightened, loosened, tightened as many times as I care to. I'm going to go ahead and let this drip a little bit. I'm going to take this whole thing off again just because of a crappy rubber gasket. Keep you posted. So we are back here again. I've gotten rid of the rubber gasket that came with the filter, this one. The filter's fine. The gasket is a piece of trash. The rubber just kind of squeezed out and it let everything leak. So what I've done is I put the original metal gasket back on, if you can see that, with a tiny coat of gasket sealer, just to be sure. I'm not sure you need that, but I've done it. And I'm going to go ahead and put this back on. I'm a little irritated that I had to drain this again. So here we go. For the second time, we're going to give this a try. I'm going to tighten these down to 8 foot-pounds. Hopefully we have no leaks. I think I'll leave you down here and you can start screaming if there's a leak. Would you look at that? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and get the pan put back under and come back here tomorrow. Done with this pain in the ass. Hey everybody. Welcome back to the third, or if you're from Europe, third try getting this thing to seal. The first one we tried, the gasket, was the rubber gasket from AutoZone that came with the filter. Did not work, squeezed out the side. The second time, I put the original one back, which is a flat piece of metal. For some reason, it didn't seal. I don't know why. So I went ahead and got a Felpro, nice thick Felpro felt-coated metal gasket, and hopefully that'll seal this damn thing up. I was contemplating why the hell I do this. I think I've come to the realization that instead of taking it somewhere and paying a lot of money, I'm just a cheap bastard. So I just keep doing it myself. Shaking my head, not sure. In any case, I put gasket material, gasket sealer, ultra black Permatex on each side of the gasket. I've set it up here and I've just kind of hand tightened these. And it's been sitting on here for about 45 minutes, just sitting. Now I'm just going to lightly torque it down. I'm using a torque wrench, but I am not torquing this thing down. What I'm trying to avoid is squeezing the gasket too much, and I think that's what was happening before. So here we go again. Third try. Maybe. Gonna go up. I'm gonna put some more fluid in. You guys need to scream at me if it's leaking again. Cross your fingers. Cross your other fingers. Cross your tailbone. or your toes. If you don't have any toes, I'm sorry about that. Cross your eyes. Thank you. I don't understand it. Well, shit. Here we go. Coming off again. Welcome back for the third time. Actually, this will be going on the fourth time. The Felpro gasket just kind of tore apart when I took this back off again. But I do think I've found the issue. And it's very hard to see unless you're really straight up closer. I've tried to get some light down on this. But when I run my finger along this edge, this edge should be completely flat. And there are some, and I believe I did this to myself. I over tightened these the first time I put it on. And some of these, specifically this hole right here, I can feel a raised kind of lip. And that's the one it's leaking on. So if I take a straight edge, I'll try to do this so you can see also. You can see light through that. So I'm thinking that I'm going to have to pound these flat to give myself even a close chance of getting this thing to seal properly. So I'm going to get you set up and we'll do that. Welcome back, everybody. You're probably wondering what I'm doing with my vise and this 7/16 socket here. And if you remember, this pan, I was showing you that I probably had over tightened the first time when I put it on, and some of these holes were high spotted. And I had put a straight edge across it, and you could see a lot of light through it. Now, I have already hammered these down, but I thought maybe I would take the time to show you how I did this. So what I've done is I took a socket that I tried to fit, and it fits perfectly just inside this little area right here where the bolt holes are. You put it in something that will hold it very tight. I mean, you could do it with your hand if you wanted to. I have this vise, so why not? So you need maybe a vise, your hand, a socket that fits, and you need a hammer. It doesn't have to be a heavy hammer. This is the one that was leaking. So let me turn this around, and I'm just going to set it on here. I'm going to try and do it this way so you can see it better. Set it on there and make sure that you don't have it tipped too far either way. Make sure you have it as level as possible on there, and you'll feel it kind of settle onto that socket. And then you take your hammer, and you don't have to swing for the benches. Swing for the benches. I'm pretty sure that's not a thing. You don't have to swing like you're hitting a home run here. So you just want to tap. This is very thin metal. And you just kind of want to tap this. And that's it. I mean, once you've got this flat, if you can see, it's pretty flat now. And I've gone ahead and done that on all of these bolt holes already. So I'm just going to get this thing. Oh, I'm scared to say it. Put some material gasket sealer on. I have actually gone through 3 gaskets now. I'm back to the original one. This is the original, the stock gasket that came off of it. It seems to be the best fit. I've cleaned it up, you know, just with some brake fluid and a small plastic brush just to get everything off it that I could. And I'm going to put this thing back together for the 3rd time. Yes. So here's my most recent concoction. Clean the pan, flattened out all the bolt holes with the setup I have over there and a hammer. This is the original gasket that I have cleaned completely up with a brush and some brake cleaner. And I have put far too much. I'm so tired of this thing. This will be the 4th time I put it back on. I put way too much gasket sealer on here. I'm just going to give this about, and believe me, I never do this. I hate too much gasket sealer, but I'm sick of this thing. I'm going to give this about 10 minutes to kind of set up, and then I'm going to put it back in the car. 4th time. I'm back again. Yay. This has been drying about 10 minutes. Just gonna do the same damn thing again. Well, damned if I could find my 1/4 inch. So I'm stuck with this, and I'm just gonna have to be really careful. I'm not a praying man much, but come on, damn it, work this time. Now this is dope. Hey, Jeff, have you gone ahead and put way too much gasket sealer on? Yeah, I've done all that shit. All right, everybody. So I have taken that pan off again for the 5th time. And this time, what I did was I took all of the gasket sealer off. I put the original gasket back on, which is just a kind of slightly rubber-coated metal gasket with no sealer whatsoever. I put it back on. It doesn't seem to be leaking, but I did figure out, this irks me so bad. I figured out what was leaking, and it hasn't been the pan this whole time. I've been working on that pan thinking it was that pan, and it was not. It was my crappy welding job on this tube. There we go, a little bit. That is the bolt that holds in this fill tube. And if you remember, I welded this fill tube, and I'm pretty sure there's a freaking hole still in it. And it's just leaking straight down this fill tube. You can see it's soaking wet with transmission fluid. So it hasn't been the pan the whole time. I'm going to go ahead and fill this up and just assume that I'm a moron. Hey, everybody. Whew, sorry, I just got done sweeping all this mess up that I made the 5 times I've done this pan. But if you notice, now, there are no leaks. And the pan has not been the issue the whole time. So, I owe AutoZone an apology. Probably. I still don't like the rubber gasket, but it probably would have worked. This is the original gasket with no sealant. The other one, the Felpro gasket, it would have worked fine too. My issue was not here. It was up here. You can see that paper towel right there. And if you walk straight up from that paper towel, and I'm using both hands so I can't point, but that's the fill tube that I welded. Apparently I did a really crap job, because that is where the leak was, and it was dripping down, and it was coming out here, and it was dripping around the pan right here. So the pan was never the problem. And I have now been certified a super genius, because it took me 5 times to figure that out. So good for me. And well, what can I say? You're watching me, so thanks. Next time, I'll just buy a new stick. Like I said, I'm a cheap bastard, and that's what I get. Thanks for sticking with me this far. Since the geniuses that engineered this thing decided that you never need to check your own fluid, because this is a CVT and only the dealer should do this. It has this cap on it. But what you can do, instead of taking this to the dealer, is you can take this cap off. It just twists and comes off. And you can buy a dipstick like this. It has millimeter readings. So it's just a standard dipstick. You can use it for a lot of cars. But this one just reads in millimeters. And the way you do this is you look at the page that came with this. Now if you see, this is a Jeep Patriot here, 07 to 15, 2.0 engine, CVT. So it's telling me I need to read chart D. Chart D is on the back, right here. So what this is saying is that when the engine is cold, when the engine is 70 degrees, the fluid for the transmission should be between 25 and 35 millimeters. Now I haven't started this engine yet, so it might take it down a little bit, and I spilled a ton. So I'm probably going to be about half a quart, if not more, low. But I'm going to go ahead and check this before I start it and just see where it is. And yes, I literally have nothing. It's way down here. So I'm not even going to try to start this thing yet. I'm going to go ahead and get some more fluid because I spilled probably 2 quarts of it changing the pan like the moron that I am. So if you've stuck with me this far, I certainly appreciate it. I know I'm going to be editing a ton of this stuff out, but this is not ready to start yet because I don't have enough fluid and because I spilled most of it. I'll be back tomorrow. It wasn't reading on the stick last night, so I got another quart put in here. I'm going to go ahead and check this again. It seems to be right around the 50 mark. Chart D. The cold target should be between 25 and 35. Now, it's at 50 right now, but I have not started this engine. If you recall, we changed the filter on the top. So I believe that's going to suck in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and start this, run it through all the gears, and see if it gets right on. Before I start a car, after I've worked on it, I like to just take my light here and just go around the engine bay and make sure that I haven't left any tools, any paper towels, any kind of things that are on the top of the engine that could fall down, get caught in the fans, or get caught on anything else, or generally cause any kind of damage. Or a fire. I guess that is damage. In any case, I think everything looks good here. So I'm going to go in, get the keys, start the car. Got the key in the ignition. I'm going to go ahead and start it. Put my foot on the brake so I can change gears. And I'm just going to shift it. I think that should be good. Now I'm going to check it again, and generally you check this transmission fluid while the engine's running. Okay, sorry about the noise. Engine's running. I'm going to go ahead and check it real quick. And once again, it looks like it's completely off the stick. There's nothing showing. I'm going to keep putting fluid in here slowly. Right about a half a quart. Right around 50. I'm going to call that good. It's a little warm outside. So it's 110 in the garage, and that target is between 30 and 40, and it's right at about 42 or so. So I'm going to call that good. That's it. I'm going to put the cap back on. Cap is right here. Just slides in. And I'm going to get this air intake put back in place. And there we have it. Transmission fluid changed, filters changed, fluid in there new, everything checked. Thanks for watching.